Hello everyone, this is the Dragon Anarchist YouTube channel. This is my first video, and here at the Dragon Anarchist, where ideas are the wings of the soul, I hope to share ideas that are important in the world and relevant, and hope to provide interesting insights and perspective into different ways of living and different thoughts. And here today I thought I would do a video for Veterans Day, since supporting the troops and celebrating Veterans Day is one of the most important things in America today. And I know quite a few veterans who I highly respect. I thought that I would share 40 different quotes from 40 different veterans who I really respect and admire for their courage and their thoughts and what they had the courage to do and say. And so I wanted to share that today with all of you, and I hope that everyone listens and enjoys the interesting perspective and insight and learns something from this video today. Here we go. I am a veteran of the United States Army and a voluntarist, two things that are exceedingly difficult to reconcile with each other. I never feel more awkward, isolated, and lonely than I do on days like today. There are many people I care about that I have absolutely no idea how to respond to when I hear the words, "Thank you for your service." Part of me wants to hit them with the brutal, God's honest truth, but then I realize I'll probably just end up pushing them away and feel even more alienated in the process. You see, I am no hero. I'm a lot closer to being a coward. I'm not brave, for if I was, I would tell the people in my life how I truly feel about what I've done, what I was a part of. I am too scared to let people into my mind, and for that I suffer from self-loathing the likes of which I can't quite put into words. A hero would stand for the truth without letting the fear of losing their friends in the process get in the way. I am no hero. I joined the military not to serve my country. I was poor and I didn't see any other future for me in this world. I was going to see the world, learn a trade, and save money for college. I joined for selfish reasons. I was trained to work on helicopters. I was stationed in Fort Dix, New Jersey, Fort Eustis, Virginia, and Fort Wainwright, Alaska. I received an honorable discharge in 1986. Although I always had doubt in my mind about the validity of the state, I did still believe in authority. I didn't worship it, but I believed it was legitimate. Yet through my time in the Army, I never really bought into the military propaganda. As soon as I could, I got out. A couple of years later, Desert Storm commenced. I can't imagine going overseas and murdering people for the bankers and war profiteers. I'm grateful that I didn't stay in long enough to go to war or to become institutionalized by the military. I began actively and purposely seeking the answers after the 9/11 attacks. Thanks to Chris Snyder, Larken Rose, and others, I was exposed to voluntarism via Facebook. It was a tough sell, but around 2009, I realized that people like Chris and Larken were right when they said that the state was the problem. Today, I can only hope that I can help others to wake up and unplug. I joined the United States Air Force at the age of 17. At the time, I was a dumb kid that bought into the terrorism 9/11 propaganda. I served for 5 years and deployed in 2010 for 6 months. During this deployment, I missed my first wedding anniversary and 21st birthday. I will never get these days back. I regret every second of the time I spent in the military. Never will I be able to repay my wife for the time I spent away from her because of my decision. I got to do some cool things and meet some cool people who are also like-minded now. Overall, it was a poor choice made by a dumb kid. A choice I hope my kids will never make. As a current active duty veteran of several foreign incursions into sovereign territories, I wholeheartedly agree with Josie the Outlaw's video supporting the troops. The military does not fight for freedom, our safety, and security. We are less safe and less free than we have ever been, and it is precisely because of military involvement all over the world. The only existential threat to your freedom is from those who occupy the granite buildings and edifices in D.C. I joined the military for the same things, believed the same lies. They don't tell you that you will be reduced to the status of property, a slave, to be brainwashed, injected, mentally scalped, and told who your enemy is like a common dog. I hope you don't think heaven awaits after that. None like to search out the root of what they are involved with. No man or woman should join the U.S. military for any reason. They should get ready to defend themselves and kill the brainwashed zombies that still believe the lies. As a veteran, I'd like to say this. I'm sorry. No, really, I am. I was misguided and blinded by mindless nationalism when I was younger, and I regret ever having enlisted. I lost 6 years of my life to this nationalistic cult behavior, and the worst part is, when I got out, I'm bombarded with, "Thank you for your service." What service? All I did was further the agenda of the warmongers by giving them another pawn to play with. And now I have to bite my lip and say, "Aw, shucks, wasn't nothing," to all the people who are still brainwashed by this nonsense. I'm a veteran myself. Young people are basically lied to and deceived into joining the military, and once we're in, that's it. We must follow orders or face severe consequences. Besides, we tell ourselves that the higher-ups must have more knowledge than we do. It can't be the way it appears. I'm a veteran, and the only part that I am proud of is signing my release papers. 9.5 years active duty special operations pilot, applied to separate as a conscientious objector when I learned about the non-aggression principle. None of my 8 deployments can strategically be justified as defense, in my mind. Tactically, perhaps, but once I moved past a soda straw view, that facade fell away. I speak only for myself. Please do not thank me for my service. Not tomorrow, not ever. I am the one who owes the American people. I owe all of you an apology. On my watch, America became less free. Drones in our skies, MRAPs on our streets, cops dressed and armed as infantry, warrantless wiretaps, indefinite detention of American citizens without a trial, etc. I weep from guilt. How did I let a nation be swallowed by fear? A nation that once told an enemy with thousands of nukes that the enemy could shoot first. But I will do what I can now that I am unshackled from my commitment to an institution. I will teach people how to protect themselves and their families. I will raise my voice above the status quo. I will remind people that they were born to be free. I will repay my debt. That is my duty. Retired Marine Corps officer of 20-plus years. Awakened about 3 years ago and continue to be amazed how unthinking I was for so many, many years. I was duped into believing that we were fighting the bad guys because the government labeled them terrorists. What I came to find out in the end was that we were the real terrorists. We would sink personal property and arrest foreigners for breaking American drug laws in international waters or even in other countries. The targets of our aggression were mostly simple farmers who had been forced into trafficking cocaine by cartels who had kidnapped their family members and were holding them ransom to force them into piloting a small boat filled with cocaine to the California coast. Some fled and tried to escape us, but none succeeded. We ended up securing 81 tons of cocaine by the end of my first deployment. Upon arrival to Fort Lauderdale, most of the cocaine was unloaded onto black vans with no plates driven by men in perfectly crisp black suits. The last of it was unloaded onto a Coast Guard van driven by coasties. The next week, we got hailed in the paper as having seized 1 ton of cocaine from narco-terrorists. When I asked about how the number was so low, I got called a conspiracy nut and told to shut up if I cared about making rank, so I did. But I started to question everything from that day on. It wasn't until the following summer that I finally understood everything that had happened was in part my fault for allowing them to use me in this manner. To the world, I am deeply sorry for helping the parasites to vandalize our world with their hate and greed. To those still active, vacate now. You cannot change their system inside of it. It is designed so they can ruin you if you try, and they will, mercilessly. If you want to defend freedom and liberty, become a voluntarist and help spread the word. Veteran of the Air Force here, still don't understand why some people think anyone would gleefully question what they've been told by people they looked up to and trusted. It shifts the ground beneath you. It's very unnerving, but I've always been a curious person, always questioning. But this con is so massive and pervasive, it rocks you to your core. I grew up on G.I. Joe. Like many here have said, not once did I defend anyone's freedom. On the contrary, this country is becoming a worsening authoritarian state by the day. That disconnect between reality and fiction is heartbreaking. I was in the infantry in the Canadian Armed Forces. I have too far of a critical mind to be able to blindly take orders or receive information that I dare not question. One day realized enough was enough. Currently in the process of getting out, having not put on a uniform for a while now. Almost 17 years in the U.S. Army, no combat. I never bought into the defend the country line, but joined the first time to learn a skill, which I did, and the second time to have a reliable paycheck. I had been an objectivist for many years while I was in the Army, but I didn't wake up to the immorality of the whole thing until I had been out of the military for almost 15 years. They kicked me out. It wasn't as reliable as I thought. Now, it's just a fact of life that I'm not proud of, but I don't hide it. It's my past. It made me who I am. I no longer believe in authority, and I try to convince others so they'll reject their belief in it. I was a Marine. I'd never do it again for many obvious reasons. I was never deployed. I sat at the Pentagon for my enlistment, so I didn't really do anything I regret, thankfully. For what it's worth, it's been my experience that current gung-ho military are more likely to find any and every excuse to marginalize our experience and change of heart. You were probably a shitbag, you never saw combat, so your opinion doesn't matter, you're a traitor, etc. I am still proud and honored to serve with some of the best men I've ever met. State or no state, a society will always need warriors to defend it. I do realize the tragedy and futility of those misguided empire-building ventures. These conflicts have wasted blood and treasure, have not resulted in anyone's freedom, and have exacerbated any conflicts they intended to alleviate. I realized my 7 years in the Army and 2 deployments to Iraq quickly became my wasted youth after I removed myself from the military's toxic environment. I have done more for promoting our individual freedom in flip-flops than I ever did in combat boots. I served large corporations, lobbyists, and war profiteers. On this day, please don't thank veterans for their service. Thank them for getting the hell out from under the military-industrial complex. I'm not ashamed of my service in the Air Force. I was young, ignorant, and indoctrinated. I truly believed that I was serving my countrymen with honor and integrity. Now, some 24 years after leaving active duty, I realize just how nefarious the government truly is. Even while I was serving, I was exposed to some crazy shit by virtue of my clearance and the era during which I served. Mostly, though, I owe my father, a Vietnam-era Navy veteran, for my re-education. May he rest peacefully, gone but never forgotten. I was altruistically motivated and wanted to defend freedom and the rights of my countrymen. As a George Bush supporter, I actually believed his domestic and foreign non-interventionist campaign rhetoric. I lived in Germany during 9/11, and that was the point where I began to see how the sausage was made. I know that the troops serving our country are not there for my protection. I know that they are the tools of the system, a system that does not care about them, no matter how many thank yous people give them today. Sometime in 2005, I read a book about our financial system titled The Creature from Jekyll Island, a second look at the Federal Reserve. This book changed the nature of my life in very profound ways. The largest change to my philosophy in life came in relation to war and why it is fought. At that time, I believed with all of my being that war was fought to carry out the best interests of our nation. When I found out who really benefited from war, it was like a brick to the face. How could my family have suffered so much so that the 1% of the world could reap vast profits? How could I have offered my life to a country that would do this to the men and women that served? To know that bankers were the real victors in war blew my mind. I knew I would be a Marine from the time I was 5 years old. Now, I had to face the fact that I was indoctrinated into believing all that we did was for a noble cause. This, for me, was the hardest pill to swallow. I am a former Marine. I'm ashamed when I really reflect on my service. I was a naive kid as well, but even then I knew I wasn't enlisting out of some burning desire to serve my fellow citizens. I was a severely understimulated kid from a boring town looking for some action. I knew the Marines would punch my ticket out of that place, and they did. I don't think a majority of service members do it to serve their countrymen. It's about glory hunting, trying to earn respect, and in some cases just for the college money and steady income. It's a chance for young guys with a lot of testosterone to get a chance to kill around the world without legal punishment. Service members are very happy to be regarded as heroes committed to service, but in all the ones I met, I don't think one genuinely struck me as committed to that. I'm not saying they are all bad people looking to kill, just statistically no less self-serving than their civilian counterparts. Service members actually have a lot of contempt for civilians, regarding them as weak and nasty. I will say that when somebody thanks me for my service, I tell them it was not a service, but a consequence. U.S. Navy, 20 years submarine force. Your oath to the Constitution violates God's laws, the commandments. It is idol worship and blasphemy. Read the whole Bible, a 1611 400th anniversary edition, King James Version, Deuteronomy 4:2. I think as directionless high school dropout, I was the perfect fodder for the machine, or as we said in the infantry, a bullet sponge. They never quite got my mind, though, and I left after one enlistment. I was able to resist the indoctrination in boot because getting yelled at by some asshole in a funny hat wasn't much different from getting yelled at by the old man. It was easy to tune him out. The whole thing was a sham, a complete waste. I could not live a life where I was expected to be the stereotypical cog in a malicious machine, to be controlled and dictated to by intellectually void robots in whose hands I was expected to place my life. Wasn't having it. Thank God it was only the National Guard in the 1980s and no war was on. Only one dreaded weekend a month and 2 weeks a year for 6 years, surrounded by mostly incompetent assholes. What a waste of time that was. I'm proud of the work I've done to preserve the lives I could when I was enlisted. As a medic, I treated everyone equally, even though it was emotionally difficult sometimes. What I regret is the tacit approval I gave the system. I was in armored infantry of the Danish army. I did 2 tours in Kosovo back in 2000 as a heavy machine gunner and in 2002 as a radio operator. I was young and looking for adventure, and the Kosovo missions seemed like the right thing to do at the time. I truly enjoyed the camaraderie, but since then I have completely changed my mind on the morality of the institution of the army and what we were being used for. Luckily, for my conscience, I have never fired a round outside of the shooting range. Gradually, I started questioning my beliefs, and I got really fed up with the bullshit and the lies of the political parties that I had given my trust. About 2007, after returning from Australia, I started really using the internet to search new information. I discovered the Austrian School of Economics, which finally made me understand what was going on with the economy. Tom Woods and Jeffrey Tucker were great at introducing me to sound economics and voluntarism. Since then, I have learned of many more. Some profound ones were Adam Kokesh, Stefan Molyneux, and Larken Rose. Today, I am at peace with being an anarchist. I believe that we are slowly but surely winning the idea war. The contributions of Mr. Larken Rose are truly inspiring, and I am proud to do my little part by spreading the ideas of voluntarism. After I wasted 9 years of my life, all those certificates, awards, and medals don't mean anything. My biggest accomplishments? Getting awarded NJP for kissing my fiancé, now husband of 13 years, aboard ship, refusing orders to go to Iraq, and not selling one contract as a recruiter. All the bennies and praise that comes with service was too good to be true. I realized there were more important things in my life than my ego. A lot of people tell me, but you were halfway to retirement. My response? It just wasn't worth it. I have so much remorse for being part of it all that I have an obligation to speak the truth. The only good that came out of it was seeing corruption firsthand, staying with my husband after they tried so hard to tear us apart, and creating a family of our own that understands the principles of self-ownership. I was in boot camp when the U.S. went to Grenada, U.S. Navy. Never saw any combat. That time was the very early beginning of my anarchist voluntarist thinking. I saw how to waste millions and millions of dollars of resources. I also learned that I had no place in an organization like the military. My time in the Army did nothing but cement my belief in the ineffectiveness of government. In honor of Veterans Day and the Marine Corps birthday, I am proud to announce that I am no longer a follower of the religious cult that is our military campaign. The truth is, our military and police forces are a ritual cult following of evil. The truth will set you free. But first, it will make you uncomfortable and even piss you off. Your initial feeling about any given topic doesn't make the truth any less valid. You want to thank a veteran or pay tribute to a veteran? Enough with the yellow ribbons and demand an end to perpetual war. You want to pay tribute? Why don't you start fighting for the freedom we have lost in this country since the Revolutionary War? And I do not mean by electing and re-electing idiotic, corrupt, bought and sold politicians who continue to legislate our freedom away, who continue to bury the nation into debt, and who continue to go to war. I've done far more serving since getting out of the military than while I was in. If the troops were really fighting for freedom, they'd be attacking the government, which is our greatest threat to freedom, peace, and prosperity. 8+ years active Army. That's right, active still. Had I known years ago what I know now, and had I felt what I felt now, I never would have served. Not only have the rights and freedoms of the American populace eroded since I've been in, but I have accepted stolen money to serve a corrupt government. I have followed the orders of corrupt politicians that have led to immoral acts. The military as an institution is as corrupt and immoral as it gets. The entire reason the government has power is because people like me have followed orders and enforced their policies. Government would hold no power without the order followers. Some people speak of revolution. The only revolution we need is to stop serving. I joined the Royal Artillery aged 18 to serve Queen and country. Like most kids, I saw the world through rose-tinted glasses. I soon realized that you are merely meat in the grinder, and that meat is used to fuel the consumption of the elite. If I knew then what I know now, I'd never have sworn an oath to the Queen. She is an insipid monster that sits idle on a throne whilst the poor of our nation go hungry and in need. The only thing that would make me pick up a rifle now would be to march on Westminster and execute the terrorists within its walls. I was indoctrinated into the system, as many of us were, where we were led to believe that serving our country was a very special and honorable thing. And we never take the time to look further because everyone around us believes the same thing. It's pounded into our head over and over that fighting in a war makes you a hero. This is number 39, and after this I'm going to read 3 quotes from a single veteran, maybe the most well-known veteran of all time. This number 39 is from a very special veteran who took the time to write a little bit of a story for his quote. So here we go. This one's going to be long, folks, but quite worth it. Like many, I was young and dumb and susceptible to the propaganda of the state. I found myself homeless and joined the military to escape my situation. I was in D.C. during 9/11 and not terribly far from the Pentagon. Like many Americans, I felt the bloodlust for revenge. We only sent a small group from my division, and we actually fought to get that slot to go. Fast forward, I was in Germany for pre-war training when Bush announced we were going to invade Iraq. Also, soldiers, including myself, shouted in approval. During that time, I got to spend a lot of time with the Kurds, a wonderful people. Despite not finding WMDs, I worked for Army intelligence. I found myself justifying it, at least for the Kurds' sake. By 2 more deployments to Afghanistan, I actually fell in love with the Afghan people. Not the Taliban types, mind you, but just your average citizen simply trying to live their life. It was also my first window getting an insight to a tribal culture that generally resisted government influence. After about 14 years of service, I did not really see any commitment to the goals our government claimed to have for these countries. I was a fierce Republican that bought into the whole idea of tight national security, so I didn't pay much mind to the violations of our liberty, as I foolishly trusted our government to use things like the Patriot Act for sincere good and defense of the country. My mindset began to change when Obama got elected. I learned a very valuable lesson that the power one party has, even if they were truly noble, is the same power the other party has that I knew for sure is not. After these revelations, I began to think about liberty and what it truly means. I started to really pay attention to what is and was going on in this country and did not like what I saw. This began my migration toward libertarianism. I figured a smaller government would be more controllable by the citizenry. Eventually, I got to thinking about that old yarn about Democrats in that socialism failed because the right people weren't in charge. It did not take long for me to really think about history and apply that logic directly to the concept of government itself. In all of human history of government, it never works out in the end. As such, I began to dive into the concepts of self-rule, and over the past year, made my migration towards anarchy and voluntarism. Today, I take account of my experiences as a soldier and contractor. I worked in many intelligence disciplines, but my primary work was with drones. We used to have competitions over who could get the most kills. Sick. Just sick. The image that burns most in my mind is following an IED emplacer and losing sight of him. Well, we thought we found him, so we radioed it in. 2 Apaches were off in the distance waiting for confirmation we couldn't give. In their bloodlust, they decided to fire into the house anyway, with Hellfire and 20mm cannons. Seconds later, dozens of women and children came pouring out of the house. None of them were harmed, fortunately enough, but there were 2 confirmed military-aged male kills. No confirmation at all, though, if they were the people we were chasing. It could have just as well been a husband, a son, or a brother who didn't have anything to do with anything. I'll never know, and that's an image that will forever haunt me. I've seen the effect a monopoly on force has on the human psyche. Those experiences, as well as watching more and more police officers get away with abuse and murder, has cemented my disdain for government and all the abuses that come with it. Truly, as C.S. Lewis said, those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, because they do so with the approval of their conscience. If, according to government, man is not to be trusted to rule themselves, then truly they have no business ruling others. Turn on the news any day of the week, and you'll see this in full effect. As a Christian, many have told me that you don't need the Bible to be moral. This is actually true. So, too, it is true that you don't need law to be civil either. I'll take dangerous freedom over secure slavery any day. I have 1 year left in my contract, and I'm free after wasting 16 years in service of the sociopaths in and around government. After that point, I can be completely free to be a full advocate of a stateless society. Not sure how or where yet, but for the time being, social media and social interaction are my tools. I'm confident in time I'll find my niche and work toward building an effective underground railroad for the minds of the still enslaved. And here we go, everyone. 3 quotes from the most decorated Marine in U.S. history at the time that he died. These are from General Smedley Butler, who lived from 1881 to 1940, and he was a United States Marine Corps Major General. He was also the highest rank authorized at that time. Like all the members of the military profession, I never had a thought of my own until I left the surface. My mental faculties remained in suspended animation while I obeyed the orders of the higher-ups. This is typical with anyone in the military service. Quote 2. I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service, and during that period I spent most of my time as a high-class muscle man for big business, Wall Street, and the bankers. Looking back on it, I may have given Al Capone a few hints. The best he could do was operate his racket in 3 districts. I operated on 3 continents. War is just a racket. A racket is best described, I believe, as something that is not what it seems to the majority of people. Only a small, inside group knows what it is about. It is conducted for the benefit of the very few at the expense of the masses. I wouldn't go to war again as I have done to protect some lousy investment of the bankers. There are only 2 things we should fight for. One is the defense of our homes. The other is the Bill of Rights. War, for any other reason, is just a racket. Well, that's it, folks, for today. I hope you all found this beneficial and interesting and insightful, and I encourage everyone to simmer on the things they have heard, and I want to tell all the veterans who contributed to this video and opened up, thank you for your service to liberty. I'm Amanda Rockwitz, I'm the Dragon Anarchist, and I'll see you on my next video.